other day I was chatting with someone who was heading out of state for an embryo transfer, and she was trying to decide if and how to line up acupuncture when she was there. And I thought to myself, this should totally be a video. So here it is. This is the acupuncture for day of embryo transfer video. I'm Nicole Lang, creator of the Baby You Want online fertility program. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel to support what I do. I'm an acupuncturist myself, and if you haven't already watched my acupuncture during IVF video, please do. In that video, I share the research on day of transfer acupuncture as well as acupuncture during all the other parts of an IVF cycle. And it's going to help you decide if doing acupuncture makes sense for you or not. Because spoiler, it's great for a lot of people, but it's not a good fit for a minority of cases. So watch it and give it some thought. If you've decided you are a good fit for adding acupuncture and you're trying to find the very best person to cover your embryo transfer, that's what we're going to cover in this video. And we're going to do it in 4 sections. First, I'll outline how day of embryo transfer acupuncture is typically done. Then we'll cover big considerations that are going to help you line up a great acupuncturist. Specifically, we're going to talk about embryo transfer experience, the IVF logistics you need to know about, and last but not least, personality and style. In this section, we'll cover the little things that have big implications because they influence not only how the actual day feels, but will help or hurt your pregnancy odds too. Okay, so sometimes people confuse egg retrieval, where your doctor aspirates eggs out of the ovaries, with embryo transfer, where an embryo that has been in a lab is put inside the uterus. To be crystal clear here, we are talking about the embryo being put in the uterus day. And although it's super nice to do acupuncture right around an egg retrieval, especially if you're dealing with significant side effects, OHSS, or you don't do well coming out of anesthesia, that is more about you and your quality of life, which absolutely matters, but you're not going to find many studies about. The studies are going to be about clinical pregnancy rates and live births, depending on whether you do acupuncture right around your embryo transfer. And here, the research is aplenty. Again, I want you to watch my acupuncture during IVF video if you want to get into the studies themselves. But for what we need to know here, it's important to note that these studies generally involve 2 different sets of acupuncture points. One is going to be for before the embryo transfer and focuses on stuff like relaxing the cervix and evening out the pelvic blood flow. And one set is for after the embryo transfer and focuses on stuff like minimizing uterine contractions from the transfer catheter itself and supporting ongoing pregnancy. The 2 treatments have some overlapping and some different points, and I cover many of these points in my acupressure videos on this channel. Now, the points are often on the abdomen, the legs, the wrists, sometimes the chest and ears. They're usually done within 24 hours before and 24 hours after the embryo transfer itself. A fair number of the more recent studies are going to do the acupuncture on site at the IVF clinic, but sometimes it's off site, like at the acupuncture provider's clinic, and sometimes it's done with an acupuncturist who the person never met before, while others it's done with an acupuncturist that the person had a chance to get to know and have at least one treatment from ahead of time. Now, obviously, some of your options are going to be dictated by your IVF clinic itself. Do they allow acupuncture on site or not? If they do, are they going to let any acupuncturist you choose on site, or do they only allow a handful that they've chosen? So starting with your IVF clinic is a good place to start here. But beyond that, I want you to think about these other things. If you're looking for embryo transfer acupuncture, you really need to make sure that the person you pick has either been closely mentored by someone who does a lot of these treatments, if they're new, or has a lot of experience themselves, especially if they're going to be at your IVF clinic or if they're going to schedule your acupuncture immediately before and immediately after your transfer at their own acupuncture clinic that's nearby. Every single IVF clinic is super different. And if a person doesn't know the flow of your unique clinic, they're going to run the risk of throwing off your flow, stressing you out, and basically probably canceling out the benefits of the acupuncture. Anyone you invite on site to your clinic needs to know the acupuncture studies and the treatments, obviously, but they should also be more like an IVF doula. They should know where the clinic keeps their extra pillows and heated blankets if they've got them, which nurse to ask if the doctor's on schedule or not, so that they can help guide your bladder prep. Plus, they should know the specific timeline and flow for your clinic. For example, at one of the clinics that I go on site to, I have to have the person done with acupuncture an hour before their transfer. At two others, it's a half hour, and at a fourth, it's only 5 minutes before transfer. If the acupuncturist you're considering doesn't know these sorts of things without you having to ask your clinic and tell them, that's not a great sign. For acupuncture off-site, having experience with your specific IVF clinic is still going to matter a ton, just in different ways. They need to know how long it's going to take you to get to your IVF clinic safely from theirs, how long you're going to be there, and when they should expect you back so they can have a room ready for you. They also might need to prompt you to use the bathroom at a certain time for the last time, or drink water, or take your Valium or an ibuprofen. They should know all of this for your unique clinic to make your whole experience smoother. If you don't have the option to work with someone who knows your specific IVF clinic really well, then I highly suggest you either do acupuncture the day or night before and the day after your transfer, or you just choose to do it early enough the morning of transfer and late enough that day that it's not going to butt right up against your transfer and the prep for it. I would much rather someone work within a non-specialized acupuncturist normal clinic routine and schedule than try to have an inexperienced acupuncturist wing it and risk unnecessary complications. And if you want to know why adding to stress is super relevant, especially here with embryo transfer, I'm talking from a science-backed pregnancy outcomes perspective, you should watch my stress and fertility video next, because how most people think about infertility and stress isn't right, and you can make a lot of great choices once you understand the actual science. So there are a ton of other logistics involved with supporting an IVF cycle and an embryo transfer, and a lot of this happens before the actual transfer day. So it's important to ask anyone you're considering how they handle these things. Here are 3 things that come to mind for me that I think you might want to cover. You're not going to know the day of a fresh transfer until at best 7 days prior when you trigger. Even then, you might still be up in the air on whether you're going to do a day 3 or day 5 or even day 6 transfer. With frozen transfers, there's a lining check about 6 or 7 days ahead of time that usually locks it in, but if the lining isn't where your doctor wants it to be, they might want to push it back a little bit. Even when you lock in a day, depending on your clinic, you might not get the exact time for your transfer until the day before in some cases. So it's super important to ask your clinic when you're going to find out, and also know if the acupuncturist you're considering can follow and flex with these sorts of needs or not. Now, if they can't flex a ton, again, it might be best to just take a spot on their regular schedule the day before and the day after, and maybe do a little DIY acupressure yourself on the actual day. Or you could just call it good and watch a funny movie and take a nap instead. If you're going to line up someone that's going to be on deck for 2 super time-sensitive, fly-by-the-seat-of-their-pants acupuncture sessions, they're probably going to charge an on-call fee. They're possibly also going to have a travel fee if they're traveling to your IVF clinic. And of course, these are on top of their regular acupuncture fees. I think it's important to be transparent, so I put all of my rates on my website, but a lot of providers don't do this. So I suggest you ask what these prices are so you don't end up getting a bill that stresses you or your partner or both of you out later. And speaking of bill-related stress, 2 other things. It might also be worth asking if they're going to charge you a fee if something changes or, God forbid, your cycle gets canceled, and whether they're going to charge you in person at the time of treatment or send you an invoice later. The theme here is decrease your stress by understanding as much as you can ahead of time. If the acupuncturist you pick gets sick, or if your date gets pushed out a bit and they're already booked with other patients that day, what will be their backup plan? Does your provider have a colleague who can go see you at your IVF clinic or at their same acupuncture office, or are you going to have to go someplace completely new? Will your acupuncturist email you a list that you have to call and reach out to on your own, or will they try to do their best to help line up someone for you behind the scenes? These are all really good questions to ask about. You might think of more questions. That's great. The main takeaway from this video is ask questions and get a sense for how responsive and how knowledgeable an acupuncturist seems just in general and how well they communicate. If you get a feeling that they don't handle these sorts of general things well, it's a pretty good reason to keep looking. Or again, do your own DIY acupressure or opt to see them in a more traditional way and not stress out about having to do something on site. Again, you need to find the right balance because these options can all be really great. Okay, so where experience in handling the logistics are going to cover your basic IVF embryo transfer needs, you don't just want your basic needs met on this big day. You want this day to be treated like the personalized, big darn deal that it is. And for that to happen, you need someone who is top-notch and who actually gets you and feels like a good fit for your unique style and personality and situation. Now, I've got some personal big non-starters. I think that people who push positivity and tell you that you need to believe should be banned from IVF. I'm not joking. These sorts of messages are just a tiny little jaunt from super hurtful beliefs like if it doesn't work, you didn't believe enough. That's ridiculous. Remember, IVF is a complicated medical treatment for a medical condition, not just a visit from a tooth fairy. I also hate when acupuncturists come in and do all sorts of crazy immoderate lifestyle suggestions. If someone immediately tells you should be taking a bunch more supplements or that you need to give up entire food groups or commit to coming to see them every other day, keep looking. My personal non-starters aside, think about your style and what feels right to you. Do you want someone who tells you the entire history of Chinese medicine? Because that's fascinating. Someone who can explain all the science in Western medicine of implantation? Do you want someone who makes your day feel touchy-feely and sweet, or do you want someone who doesn't talk much at all and just leaves you to yourself? There's no right or wrong answer in general, but there is a right and a wrong answer for you, and it's okay to own that. And speaking of making your day more you and customized, I happen to have an entire 35-minute lesson on everything I want every person to know, so transfer is super supported and fabulous, and that is with or without acupuncture, and it's inside my IVF Insider guide. This video covers the lead up, the actual transfer day, and the 9 or so day wait until you get your pregnancy test. Again, this is for with or without acupuncture, and you don't want to miss it because I guarantee it's going to make your transfer day and your entire life and cycle so much better. I'll include a link in the description. All right, I just took you through the basics of day of transfer acupuncture, and then we explored some factors that should help you find a great acupuncture provider. Their experience level, how they handle IVF logistics, and personality and style. I so hope that your transfer is exactly what you need and you want it to be. Let me know how it goes, and if your acupuncturist does something particularly great, tell me about it in the comments. Be sure you head over to the Baby You Want website and sign up for that IVF Insider guide, and while you're checking that out, be sure to look over the bladder prep PDF and the meditations and so much more that's in that same guide. Remember, small and cumulative things will add up. You're doing great in a really hard place, and I'm out in the world cheering you on. Flexibility.